So my name is Renee Murphy. I am the Chief Communications and Community Relations Officer here for Jefferson County Public Schools. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate your help and your feedback and your time. This is an important topic as we talk about the federal stimulus money that the district will be getting here and what we're going to do with that money. It always sounds like, great, we've got this money. Now, how do we utilize it best to serve kids? And that's where we need your help. That's why we're all here today to have this conversation and to begin. So I do just want to introduce some of the folks who are on with us today. I'm so excited because we have a cross section of stakeholders that are on with us today. We have students on with us. We have parents. We have JCPS employees, teachers. We have community partners, great organizations that work with us. We have our groups that represent our international populations and our English as a second language students. We have people on here who represent our students who are highly motivated.
I should just do one.
And so we do ask that if you are on with us, you go ahead and mute your microphones for right now. The great thing is we're going to have a chance to get into small groups and have some discussion after the presentation. So I'm on here from the district. We have several other district representatives on here as well that will be able to capture your feedback when we do go to our small groups. We have Florence Chang, who is on with us. She is in our data and research department. John Ansman, who is here with us today. I've roped him out of retirement to help us with this program. We have Mark Hebert, Sarah Wagner, and Deanna Sutherland from the communications department on here as well. We have Cordelia Harden, our chief financial officer, here with us. We have Delquan Dorsey, who is here with us. He's a part of our diversity, equity, and poverty department. We also have Angela French Coles, who is here with us as well, and will be in one of the breakout rooms to help capture some of your feedback. I think I mentioned everyone who will be in the breakout rooms, but if I forgot, I will come back around to it. But thank you guys for participating, and thank you to our team for helping to facilitate our breakout rooms. So we are talking about funding the future, and here's a look at how the afternoon is going to go. My plan is to keep this to just about 1 hour, and I think together we will be able to do that. So we will go over the background, some more information about how we got to where we are right now, and some more information about how we've utilized the stimulus funds that we've received so far. We'll also talk about our overarching goals with the stimulus funds. What do we want to accomplish together as a team and together as a community? Some of the ideas that we're looking at long-term that go beyond just post-pandemic, but what we're looking to do to invest in our district to make sure that students succeed 10, 15, 20 years from now as well. There will be an opportunity after the presentation to ask some clarifying questions that you may have about the information that's shared with you. And then we're going to go to the breakout rooms. And this is an important part. So the folks that I mentioned who are here from JCPS will be in the rooms with you to capture your thoughts. We want to get your feedback on some of our initial ideas on what we're thinking about with this stimulus funding. And then most importantly, we want to hear your ideas. We will have some guiding questions that will help to guide the discussion and to get more feedback from you. And then we'll come back as a whole group and we'll report out on our ideas. And then we'll talk about next steps and where we go from here together. So you may hear us refer to the stimulus funding as ESSER. So what does ESSER mean? ESSER is the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Funding. So to help school districts across the country rebuild and come back stronger after the pandemic, the federal government has established several rounds of stimulus funding to help school districts all across the country. We refer to that as ESSER. And so here's some of the background when we talk about ESSER. There are 3 rounds of funding that have been approved by the federal government to provide to school districts, to public and secondary schools to be used by 2024. So this money is to be utilized over the next few years. So we have a short window of time, and that's why your feedback is so important to us. The funding was established to safely reopen schools, address unfinished learning, and sustain staffing levels as much as possible. So those are some of the things initially why the funding was approved. And our challenge now is creating sustainable and equitable systems with these funds. We talked about making sure we're setting our district up for long-term success down the road. And so that's where we really are. And that's some of the background around the stimulus funding. Okay. I'll ask one more time, if you are joining us new, thank you so much for being here. We're glad you're here. And we do ask that everyone just mute their microphone while we are on the meeting. All right. Thank you all very much. So I want to provide some information about what we have used our stimulus funds on thus far. So we have been awarded some of the funds. And so to date, this is kind of where we have used the money in some of our expenditures that we've had. Many of you have seen what we've done with technology in terms of making sure that all of our students had access to Chromebooks and to hotspots and internet connectivity during virtual learning and NTI. So some of the money went towards that. Personal protective equipment. We had to prepare to reopen our schools in March to make sure that all of our schools had all of the PPE they needed to safely reopen. Some of the staffing needs, funds have been used for that. Funds have been used for meals for students during NTI and in the summer of 2020. Some schools also had after-school programs, and that funding, that money was funded, or the programs were funded through some of the stimulus money as well. You've seen and heard about our Backpack League and our summer learning experiences. We have more than 6,000 students who have registered for Backpack League, and so some of the funds have been used to support that. We've had other kind of miscellaneous indirect costs. There were some funds that we had to provide to private schools as a part of the allocation. And there were also several printing needs that we had around communication. So many of you may remember us printing out paper packets for students early on during the pandemic when our schools first closed. Before we could get all the Chromebooks to everyone, we were providing and mailing out all of that material to students in hard copy. These are some of our long-term overarching goals of the stimulus funding plan. So we know we have to address the right now. There is the need to address the immediate and urgent needs of our students. We also want to provide instruction that's reflective of the academic and social emotional structure that best serves our students. We often talk about gaps in our district. So we want to work towards closing the opportunity gaps by creating an infrastructure that expands high quality instruction, reduces the digital divide, and addresses all of our facility needs, which Dr. Polio talks about quite often with where we are in our district right now and where we need to go in terms of our actual school buildings. And we want to invest in our staff capacity, and we want to sustain our staffing. That's a crucial part to all of this and a really important part. We can't do this work without our team players and our staff and our colleagues in place to make sure it happens. So when we look at our plans long-term, you may hear us talk about something we call future state. And future state is will ultimately be a part of our long-term strategic planning as we look towards the future. And some of the things that we're really looking to do long-term as a district to best support students includes continuous and extended learning for all students. So we talked about summer learning with Backpack League, but not just Backpack League. What does that look like beyond the summer months? We know we have our Lit Am programming that's successful in the summer and in the winter and during spring break. We've had discussions about student service centers. We'll talk more about that too. You've also seen information about community learning hubs. We saw what was possible during NTI and during virtual learning with our community partners. So we want to see how we can continue that when we resume back to 5-day-a-week instruction as well. We also want to focus on our facilities, HVAC renovations, classroom improvements. We want school spaces that inspire students to continue to learn and really foster that nurturing learning environment. We are having a focus around school choice and really taking a look at our Office of School Choice and ensuring there is equity to school choices for every student. Our technology needs. We were able to provide these Chromebooks and hotspots right now, but how do we sustain that? How do we maintain that one-to-one device plan, and how do we keep that in place long-term and make sure that every student has access to a device? And update our classroom technology as well. Technology moves so quick, so I want to make sure that we're updating that information. We want to make sure we're resourcing our high poverty schools as well. And so we know we need to be there for our students and for their social, emotional health as well. And we talked too about our staff capacity. So we want to really build up our workforce. So through workforce and leadership development around recruitment, retention, and having that pipeline of really strong school leaders that will make for dynamic campuses for our students to continue learning. So that's kind of the big picture, how we've spent the money, our goals, where we're looking to go long term. And I want to touch on another area that we are looking at right now when we talk about our stimulus funding. So there's another round of federal stimulus money that we are expecting to be awarded. And that amount is around $400 million that we're expecting to be awarded here at JCPS. And so as we look to the right now. What can we do with this money most immediately over the next 3 years? Here are some of the ideas that we're considering in the district. Well, the last point there, some of that direct funding to schools. We know what schools need. We know they're going to need support. That's one of the big things that we're looking to do. The student support service centers or student learning centers. You heard me mention that once before. The idea of this would be a center that would be open in the afternoons and into the early evening, where there would be a certified instructor who would be there to be able to help students with additional math and reading, literacy help, numeracy help, as well as having a staff in place to support social and emotional needs for students too, and really extending the opportunities for instruction. So what can that look like beyond just the traditional school day? How can we extend that beyond that, as well as the summer opportunities too? And speaking of summer, we have seen a great growth in our summer learning opportunities this summer, and we know we want to expand that even more. There's great opportunity in the summer to have cool, innovative learning where kids are super engaged, where we can try new things to make sure that we have a one-of-a-kind approach to learning. So we want to be able to do that too. And we've talked a lot about technology. In order to keep up with the technology, we have to have a strong system in place. And we think that through these funds, we can begin to develop that system as we move forward to make sure that we can have that one-to-one access, closing the digital divide, setting us up for long-term success for our students. So those are some of the areas that we are looking at. Those are just some of our initial ideas with this third round of funding. Those student support service centers or student learning centers, looking to have potentially up to 3 of those in our community in the Smoketown area, in West Louisville, and in Newburgh. Expanding summer learning opportunities. So we have Backpack League right now, but how big could Backpack League be? Are there ways to incorporate other programs into our summer learning opportunities? And providing more technology to students. There are so many things that we can do right now. We have all seen what's possible. John Ansman, who is on with us as well, who is helping to facilitate this meeting, he's like, we're trying some new things, and we have tried so many new things in terms of community outreach and engagement. Each time it's a little bit different during the pandemic. Today is my first time actually trying Breakout Rooms, so bear with me here. But that's the great thing with technology. We've learned what is possible. So we see what's possible in our workspace, and we want to see what's possible for students in the classroom as well. And then making sure we have that direct funding support for our students to those schools to make sure schools have what they need right now. So that's kind of the overview of the information where we are before we go to our breakout rooms. So I want to just take a pause. So if you have any questions about some of our initial ideas, the expenditures that we've had so far, our long-term goals and our goals with the funding right now. This is the time that we'd like to be able to answer any of those questions about what has just been shared with you. And if you do have a question, I'm going to try and expand some so I can see everyone. But if you have questions right now, this is the chance we'd love to be able to hear from you before we go into our feedback session and our small group work. I think there's a hand feature, so if you do have a clarifying question, you can just raise your hand. I'm flipping through to see if anyone has any clarifying questions. Or you can just...
Hey, Renee Murphy, David Armour, principal at Camer.
Hi, Mr. Armour.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to engage with this and community input. Are dollars amounts already spent or allocated in each of these categories, or is it still kind of up in the air where we can spend the monies?
No, in those areas that I shared with you at the end around the service centers and the technology and those 3 points I made towards the end there?
Yes.
No, none of that has been established, so that's been set in stone. That's why we're here, because we want to hear how important those things are to you, as well as the other things that you may see on the ground at your school, Mr. Armour, with your families that you think can really help us to break down barriers. So there is not a dollar amount that's set aside with those at this time.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Murphy.
Sure. Any other clarifying questions?
Renee, you've got a couple in the chat.
Okay. Let's see. Hey, John, can you see the chat?
I can. Reverend Lightsey, you have your hand up. Would you like to direct a question to Ms. Murphy?
Thank you. Yes, I'm so excited to hear that the Newburgh area would be one of the locations for the service centers. I was curious as to whether or not the location had been decided upon and hours of operation.
The official locations, again, this is all part of our discussions right now. And so the locations have not all been decided upon. I think you'd asked you about the hours. And so this is something we're looking to have in the evening hours. So it could be open right after the traditional high school, middle school time, up into the early evening hours. And I would say early evening being 7 or 8 o'clock at night.
A quick question. Oops.
Yes, go ahead.
I was wondering, oh, I'm sorry, hold on. We have two people in the same room, so there is noise.
Hi, Giselle.
Hello, hello. Okay, you got it. Okay, I was wondering how many students are you expecting to be able to serve in each of these student support service centers?
You know, that's something, I don't have an exact number on that right now. We've been kind of looking at those key areas and really depending on the feedback that we get from the community, you know, what that staffing could look like. Those are things that are still being determined, but we want to hear your input on that too, and let us know your ideas on, you know, how many students do you think that we need to reach in these particular areas? Do we need to go outside these areas? How many service centers do you think that we would need to have? So I see a couple of questions too in the chat, and I'll come back to the live questions. So someone asked, will there be specific plans released? Judith, hi Judith, thanks for joining us. Asked, will there be specific plans released for students with disabilities? And yes, there will be information that will be shared about how the funds will service students, our ECE students, our students with special needs. Elizabeth asked if we can share some information on how the learning centers will support high school age students. The learning hubs have focused on elementary and middle school students. So I think the goal of those student service centers / learning centers is really about servicing students at every age. So if you're a high school student and you are looking for assistance in Algebra 2, or, you know, those are some of the things. But in addition to the academic approaches, we want to make sure that we are also supporting having those wraparound services for students too. So the social emotional support, I can see extending to employment assistance for students as well. One more question too in the chat. A couple more questions. So will there be anything about the curriculum? Again, some of these things too, if you have ideas about where we can go with the funding, this is why we're here. We're going to capture all of that from you. And Mr. Harmer also wrote in the chat here, lots of good ideas, but hard to prioritize without ballpark costs for some of these possibilities. So yes, that's something that we will have to really look at and see exactly how much that would cost, how much staff would be at a site, where the site would be, what kind of a facility that we would use. So those are all some of the details to be worked out, but that's kind of the big picture of some of the things that we're thinking about.
Renee, you have a hand up from Mr. Manzila.
Hello, Mr. Mancia. Oh, I think you're
right. Now, yes.
Yes.
Now I can talk. Nice to be part of this meeting. I have a question regarding not just international students who, by the way, failed 72% of them failed grade last year. It's also about low-income families. Is any conversation at all about include parents in the education process, like to have a true two-generation approach to education, or is it just focuses only K-12 without including the parents?
Family engagement is a big part of our planning. In fact, Crystal Hawkins, who is our family engagement specialist, we've been in conversations with her, we've been working with her, and building out our planning also includes working with our families throughout the process too, sir.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Bishop, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. So I think to Edgardo's point there a little bit, there are, and this is reflected, in the fact that so many community-based organizations are part of the conversation today. There are community-based organizations here in Louisville who have been providing the kinds of programs and resources that it sounds like you want to be included in these community learning centers. Has there been a conversation already in how to include those organizations in these learning centers, or is JCPS planning on sort of building these programs from scratch? It seems like there will be a lot of, creating structures there.
Yes, so this is not just a JCPS siloed project. We know that it will take all of us to really make great strides in going to where we want to go and to having all of our students succeed. So I think that this is a joint effort. This is a collaborative process. I don't see this something, I don't foresee this being something that would just be us working alone. I think this is something that we work on together as a community and we build that out. But I definitely want all of these thoughts and ideas. We'll be capturing them in our feedback, and we want to make sure that's reflected. So you guys have made great points. And Judith had one question too, Mr. Mancia. Were you speaking about family engagement or adult learning? I think you were talking about family engagement, but let me know if I'm incorrect.
I was talking about both, but thinking about parents that needs education in order to educate the kids. So,
gotcha. And that's something that, when we talk about those student service centers, maybe there is an adult component in that as well, in terms of making sure the family has the resources that they need. What would these centers look like? What would be incorporated in these centers? So I think that's something that we want to capture. All right. Well, thank you guys for that initial feedback and some of those clarifying questions. We do want to move to our breakout rooms right now. So we want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to speak, because we're excited. We have so many various groups represented with us here today. And so we are going to go to breakout rooms, and you will be with a JCPS employee, and they will help to take down the notes and take down information. So here, as we go to our breakout rooms, just a quick reminder, we want to review the information that was shared in the presentation. And then we want you to respond to some of the following guiding questions. And I do want to give a big thank you to Mr. Harmer and Eros, who provided some great feedback to us and things that we can think about in terms of having a rich conversation with you all today. And taking a look at some of these guiding questions. So when we look at the guiding questions, what do you think JCPS should spend the funds on to best help students achieve? What programs do you wish were in place across the district that may better serve students? And what would help to break down barriers that prevent students from being successful? So your facilitator from JCPS will have these questions, so you don't have to have them all memorized right now. You don't have to take a picture with your phone or anything. But just know that that's the discussion we want to have. So we want to have your feedback on some of those initial thoughts that we shared with you, those service centers, expanding technology, increasing opportunities for summer learning. But then what else matters most to you? What is not working that you see a solution to? What can we do better? What's the one thing that's missing from our district right now that's going to be the game changer for our kiddos? So John Ansman is going to release us into the breakout rooms. We have about 15 minutes in the breakout rooms, and then we'll come back and a representative from your group will report out on the feedback from your discussions. And we're back. John, I can't see you in my boxes here. I know you're on here somewhere, but we did it. We did it.
And I apologize for the temporary confusion. And so for my first time of doing breakouts, it was a little bit of a struggle, but we got through it. So I appreciate your patience and understanding.
As I told my group earlier, I hope the group gives us grace and understands where we're coming from. So thank you guys. We had great discussion in our group. And so at this point, we do just want to kind of go round robin with our facilitators and hear what your groups had to share and kind of hear feedback helps us to think about some ideas as well. So we had a great group discussion with our group, and I'll begin with some of the things that came up. We're just making sure we keep equity at the forefront, which is one of the things that we do here in JCPS, but looking at it through the lens of these areas. How are we ensuring equity? How are we ensuring access? Transportation was something that came up too as a key component to, if we have these centers, how are we ensuring that students can get there? Mr. Mancia also mentioned, what he saw at Americana with their learning hub and how they were able to keep students, keep up with their grades while we were in NTI, and that family engagement component and how that's so important. Making sure that we have safe environments. If we have the centers, so how are we ensuring safety with this? And also collaboration and working with community partners and centers that already have students there. And a real emphasis on really identifying key locations for those student service centers and making sure they're areas for where all kids can get access to from first grade to 12th grade. Making sure that we are keeping ECE in the forefront too of our work, and making sure that we have support for our students, especially at the transition points when they are older, making sure they have the life skills to go on to be successful adults. In that same approach, making sure we're taking a look at our young adults too, 16 to 24. What are we doing to make sure that we can support them and they're successful? A great term I had not really heard before, but I see it play out very often is students who are parentified, so students who are caring for younger siblings, and how we can ensure that while they're caring for their younger sibling, they can take part maybe in the service centers. They have access to all these things as well. And then taking a look at childcare and how that fits into this equation too. So those were some of the thoughts from our group, and some feedback on just some of the things that they heard and things that we're looking at moving forward. So John, I'll go to you next with your group feedback.
Thanks, Renee. Our group also had a really good conversation focused on ways to help students achieve and thinking about ways to break down barriers. And the one topic that came up was trying to think outside of the box and not limit our instruction or our classrooms to look as has traditionally been, or what we think of as normal, and to think outside of the box, and that learning doesn't just occur between 7:40 and 2:20, but we need to think of ways to extend learning outside of just the regular school hours, whether that be the offsite hubs or other ways to also help not only elementary, middle, but to make sure that we're tapping on the shoulder of high school students who also need some of that enrichment opportunity as well. And getting away from traditional settings and traditional resources that are more relevant and more timely for the students that we now serve, making sure that we are getting resources to those students who really may have found themselves in a challenging or difficult situation, and getting real critical feedback from families on what their students particularly may need in order to help them be successful. Also, another point was to think about ways to recognize the resources that our community-based partners have. They have expertise and they have the relationships with families, and trying to tap into those resources at the community-based agencies to help them as they do their reaching out to their communities that they serve, and then taking advantage perhaps of some of the ESSER fundings to help strengthen that relationship between the district and organizations to provide some of that after school enrichment that is relevant for the communities that our community partners serve. And so connecting those programs to the broader base communities. And then in addition, also thinking about ways to take away what students may perceive as a stigma from having extra enrichment opportunities or programs, giving them exposure to real life people, real life situations, more relevant instruction as they begin to try to find a real eagerness for learning. So our group was able to address those three questions in thinking about ways to provide additional support for student learning.
Okay, thank you, John. Florence, I'll go to your group.
Hey, thank you. And I will try not to repeat, because I think our group did cover a lot of the same areas that John and Renee Giral's group did. What I will share is in the chat, Lyndon Pryor, thank you, sir, has from the Louisville Urban League has shared a really important document I think everyone should look at. It's the Louisville Urban League and the coalition that they built to develop some suggestions for ESSER funding. It is rich, it is deep, so please review that. But in terms of our group, we discussed many of the same things in terms of disconnected youth and pathways for overage undercredit, the young adolescents and older adolescents, support for them. I think some of the new things that maybe haven't been mentioned is the importance of that when they return in the fall, we're going to have to know who really is going to be in desperate need of social emotional learning. So Dr. Newman did a great job summarizing that, as we're coming back, some of these kids we haven't seen in a while, we're going to need to really have a strong data system to identify who is needing assistance, develop those personalized individual plans for those students, have a strong progress monitoring system, which means we will need more adults. We will need more adults in the building to help with supporting these intense individual learning plans. And then additional ideas are things like incentivizing being in high needs schools and ensuring that those schools have a lot of support, and working with our university partners and pre-service teachers was also brought up. The last thing I'll say is I think the takeaway from our discussion is the importance of continuing to engage our community, that this was just the starting conversation, and that as we continue to develop and hone our ideas, that this is collaborative and that we are doing this together as a community. So I'll end there. Thank you.
Thank you, Florence. That last point was great. This is a collaborative effort, and this is just the beginning. So yep. I'm excited to continue the work with everybody, and I know all of us here at JCPS feel the same way. So thank you, Florence.
Thanks.
Deanna, let's hear from your group.
Sure. We also had a great discussion, and our main focus was the fact that these funds can't be used to support staffing needs, but that the district does have some very large scale facility needs and a desire to see these ESSER funds take a giant chunk out of those facility needs so that more of the revenue increase funds can be used to support staffing. And some of the specific ideas around that are maintaining small class sizes. The folks in our group really saw this as a very, very large priority. Also around expanding staff and administration for the registration and application period, and then also for our English language learners as they are expanded in school choice options, and we have more folks throughout each of our schools that need that language support. So just the overarching point that whatever we can do to make sure that we are able to tackle some of those staffing needs, even if it is by using these ESSER funds actually to do more on the facility side, so the revenue increase, future state funds can go toward that, would be wonderful. Definitely agreement on the community partner side of things with, in terms of the learning hubs, community hubs, relationships they already have with students, and maybe ESSER funds can go to support those relationships and bolster them and have even more of that good work continue in addition to and in support of the learning hubs there. And then also agreement that summer learning is going really well this year. And if we can get feedback from our community partners on how we can continue that in the future with the support of ESSER funds and have it be even better as the years go forward. So lots of good feedback.
All right, thank you very much, Deanna. Appreciate it. Thank you to your group as well. Ms. French Coles, I see you on here. Can you give us feedback from your group?
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone. And from our group, we talked about access to the technology. One of the challenges that we saw throughout NTI were when we have new students coming to the district, replacing and updating devices. We have concerns about hotspots and enough to meet the needs of all of our families. In many of our homes, EF families, many children in the home and not enough hotspot access. We would like to see streamlined and simplified systems for access and maintenance of devices. We would like to see language services expanded to continue to meet the needs of our increased EL population, and we know that population is going to continue to expand. And then the foster students, as they are transitioning in and out and moving around the district, that they receive devices in a timely manner, which is the same concern we've had for the EL students over this last year. And then we have a partner from the justice system. We have a concern regarding re-engagement services with the appropriate wraparound services as we help these students successfully re-enter JCPS. So those are some of the major barriers that we discussed in our breakout.
Different topics there. Thank you very much. All right, Mark Hebert, can you report out from your team?
And a lot of it has already been said, but I think the biggest thing that came out of our group was that the service centers, everybody loved that idea, with some caveats. They said that they ought to be in key locations, was number one issue. Number two, there ought to be more transportation to make sure that the kids that don't live in those neighborhoods can get to the service centers and that really need the help after school. That ECE kids have access. And then also that there's enough staff on board to track down the kids that really need the help. In other words, some of the kinds of things we had during the school year where we just couldn't find some kids and we really needed people to, beat the bushes to get these kids to these after school services. So that was one thing. Also, the small class size has already been mentioned. We had several comments about that, including one about cutting to really focus on cutting class sizes, and Chris Harmer brought this up, and so did Gabriel Rollins, who said, not only should we consider cutting class sizes, but figure out how the money can best be used to impact the most number of kids. Don't spend it on little niche things. Hire co-teachers for students with IEPs, hire counselors at the service centers, get kids to the service centers. Technology upgrades was also mentioned in our group. Access to broadband is a problem. Maybe the service centers could be used to provide Wi-Fi, and those could be the hubs to provide Wi-Fi for kids that don't have it or have problems with the Wi-Fi. Those were the big things. Extracurricular activities were thrown in as well to make sure we have plenty of those for kids. About it.
All right, thank you very much. Some great points from your team as well. Robert, I think I failed to introduce you earlier. Our Chief of Schools, Robert Moore, is here with us. Don't take that in any kind of way. You know that I'm fond of you. So I'm sorry, I don't think I introduced you earlier, but Robert Moore, Chief of Schools, is here with us. Robert, can you tell us what your group had to say?
Certainly, Chief Murphy. I like to float on the radar, so I don't mind. We're good. Actually, our discussion started with the question, and what was the process of determining student needs? So I revisited the formula that we use in order to fund our high poverty schools to show that we are making sure that each school has the funding to support their needs, and that each school, because the demographics and the needs are different at each school, the administrator and the staff, the parents, and the community of that school would determine the student needs and determine how some of the funding will be used at each individual schools. Although we do have district-wide funding things that we will do, there are some specific school needs that will that need to be addressed. So we did talk about that. And then one of the things that it's a common theme as I listen to other groups speak is the wraparound services for our families, parents, grandparents, and others. And this was specific to language access. Although some of our ESL and many of our ESL students are being very successful with language access and academics, some of our parents and families of these students need more access and wraparound services. So we recognize that, and we're going to have to brainstorm, I think, to see how we can assist with that. And then recognizing that we are not the experts of all things, and that we are going to bring in other organizations for expert collaboration to help us with the needs of our students. And again, expanding some of our ESL services beyond the 1-year academy, maybe having some transition support after they return to their reside school was part of the discussion. And then, as you mentioned, Chief Murphy earlier, that how can we use some funding to support safety in our schools and around our schools.
Thank you very much, Robert.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like you guys had a great discussion as well. Delquan Dorsey. Delquan is here with us, and let us know what feedback you got from your group.
Hold all the answers. No, I'm just playing. A lot of the same, but to some of the points that were made earlier, technology, of course, invest in technology, making sure we're one-to-one, but not only just the equipment, but also the applications and the web learning, and making sure that we do all we can, if not more, to supporting families with technical assistance around that technology. As we experienced through NTI, we know that part of the struggle was parents being able to help the students in a lot of cases. I don't know about you all, but my kids help me all the time understanding technology. So, but want to empower the parents so that they can do whatever they can to help students. Another language that is not often talked about, but more ASL classes, sign language at every school, and more ACT prep assistance that is free of cost. We have those programs out there. I think part of the challenge is making sure more students know about that resource. And another part, in addition to that, mental health practitioners, making sure that we know that I think all of them at the schools, if not, there's mental health practitioners that are assigned to each school, making sure the students really know that that resource is there and what does it look like and how to be utilized. And so that was part of one of the things that came up. And then, of course, the wraparound services. Thank you.
Thank you, Delquan. As you can tell from the meeting today, I am a technological wizard. So my kids help me all the time too. It was great feedback from your group. Some things I had not thought about too. So thank you to your thoughtful group there for those thoughts and ideas. Sarah, I think this will be our last report out, and Sarah Wagner, your team, let us know what your team thought.
Well, great news. A lot of it has already been shared. So great ideas all around by everybody. One thing that I haven't heard yet that we talked about is our nutrition services team obviously went above and beyond this whole year to offer that incredible resource to families with the food and the services, several times a week during the school year and now weekly during the summer. So if there's any way to keep that going in some capacity, that could be a tremendous resource for families, especially as we move forward. So that was a really good thought. And then again, student service centers or success centers were wildly popular in our group as well. People are very excited about that. But again, making sure those are staffed adequately and with really high quality teachers who have a deep desire and passion to be there and can offer that really intensive tutoring for our students. Workforce investment, we talked about that a lot too. So attracting and retaining teachers to JCPS, offering incentives for retired teachers to return to the classrooms. That was a really cool idea as well. And smaller classrooms again. So that was just a few of ours. Again, I've heard a lot of the other great things we had on here mentioned. So don't want to continue taking up time, but really great discussion.
All right. Thank you very much, Sarah. And actually, Cordelia Harden is on here too. And we'll wrap up with Cordelia's group. And the great thing is Cordelia, your group, they were able to ask you all the money questions. So, and Cordelia has all the money answers. So Cordelia, what feedback did you receive from your group?
Just like the others, a lot of it was the same. Facility repair was one issue. Books. My team felt like books were needed. One thing, it's the teaching is going on in the classroom a lot of times with the technology, but then when the child comes home, the parent's not able to help because they don't have a book or a reference to help their child. So if books could be provided in some cases, in particular math was one area. We also, as far as meeting each individual student based on their need, whether it's food, special education, English learners, trauma, and even some apprenticeships so that the kids can have some gainful employment and accelerated learners. Transportation was a big topic also, especially for after-school activities, not just sports, but after-school programs. A lot of children are having to take the TARC buses to get home. And if we could have transportation at all levels would be great. And then meeting parents where they are. Parents have varied schedules as far as when they have to work, and to be able to connect with the teacher when there are concerns or just to get follow-ups with teachers. That was one of the concerns, whether it be by Zoom or just varied schedules, in order to be able to have that opportunity to talk with the teachers.
Great, thank you very much, Cordelia. And thank you to everyone for sharing your thoughts and ideas. And like we said before, this is kind of our first initial meeting. And I'm really excited about this because we have over 50 people that are on with us today that have been able to have a voice and have feedback. And this is the first start. So thank you all for being here today. And I want to kind of talk you through the next steps and what we're going to do from here. So the next step, I would love for this group to be able to come back in person and have a meeting on July 21st at 6 p.m. here at Van Hoos. We've reserved the boardroom where we have our board meetings. So I would love it if everyone can come back on July 21st at 6 o'clock. We'll send out a meeting invite to everybody. And this has been a great discussion already. You got me thinking about all the things that we can do and some different ideas and things that I just had not thought about and weren't on my radar yet, but they're really, really good. So we want to continue this discussion. At the next meeting, what we'll do is we have our survey that's available right now, where we've had about 800 responses so far with feedback on the ideas that we share with you today, as well as other ideas, things like you guys were sharing. So we will kind of go over the results from our survey. We'll share that information with the group as well. So go ahead and mark your calendars. We want to get this group back together on July 21st at 6 o'clock. And so I mentioned before our survey that we have that's up right now. If you have not completed our survey, it's on our homepage. It's linked off our homepage right now. Please feel free to go ahead and complete that survey. Share the link within your organizations and with your friends, your family. There's a video on there as well that kind of gives just a quick overview to give you some additional context. But we definitely want you to fill out the survey and be a part of the ongoing discussion as well. So I think there's a few questions. I see some things in the chat popping up. Let me make sure there's not any other questions here before we close. And so if you have any other questions, though, and you want to reach out to me directly, please do so. My email, you guys got my email, so please reach back out to me. But this has been a great starting point for us. This has been a great chance for us to come together and think about where we want to go as a district, where we want to go as a community. And the key points that were made by many of the groups is that, we're not in this alone. This is a collaborative process. This is the beginning, and we're going to grow and help students together. So thank you for your time. I think we're pretty close to about an hour, so I wanted to be respectful of everyone's time here. 4:07, pretty good. And we got our breakout rooms to work out. So thank you for being here. This has been great. I mean, I'm so excited we had this number of people on with us today. Be on the lookout for the next invite for our in-person meeting, where we will continue this discussion and dialogue. And we'll see you here in a couple of weeks. And please complete the survey. If you have any other questions in the meantime, please reach out to me. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.